They called themselves superhumans, but turned out to be a bunch of maniacs, thieves, and perverts. Himmler, the head of the SS, personally watched people freeze in gas chambers and ordered to organize brothels for prisoners in concentration camps.
He was a virgin until the age of 28, because he was rejected by all women.
Göring, the hero of the war, finally fell into luxury, and by the end of his life, could not do without morphine injections.
When he was already the head of Luftwaffe, he came closer to the parade, and I looked into his eyes. They were as if they were glass.
Goebbels, the voice of the nation, collected the disabled and cripples for his funerals.
Yes, it turned out that some of the leaders of the Third Reich were inclined to perversions.
Where did the Führer look? Or was he himself a part of this hell, where sadism became the norm and perversion the tool of power? Everyone has secrets, mistakes of youth, dubious connections, dangerous passions, dirty money, and bloody crime. They are hidden in a secret room. Be careful, the doors are opening. His short figure with narrow shoulders and wide hips was crowned by a big head. From the sleeves, he looked tiny, like a doll's handkerchief. Heinrich Himmler more resembled a teacher or modest official, but not the Reichsführer of the SS. And he was far from being a true Aryan.
Himmler, who made the impression of a weak person, was actually one of the most cruel people who created this nightmare of racial terror created by Nazi Germany.
Himmler was always in the shadow of other Hitler's associates, the Minister of Propaganda Goebbels and the Minister of Aviation Göring. However, it was his eyes that were called the killers of the century.
In the ranks of the main Nazi criminals, Himmler is undoubtedly in the second place after Hitler. Maniacal passion for the superiority of the Aryan race and subordination of all other events to this idea is perhaps the main sin that can be called Himmler's.
Himmler took part in the final solution of the Jewish question. Himmler inspected the concentration camps. Once, in 1943, in the Sobibor camp, he decided to personally check the efficiency of the gas chambers. But there were not enough living prisoners in the camp. Therefore, the SS men drove away hundreds of local Jews to prove to the boss that the method was working.
Himmler is a wild system of surveillance of German citizens. It is the Gestapo, it is denunciations, it is fear and remembrance. Therefore, this is perhaps the most terrifying product of the Third Reich. Even more repulsive than Adolf Hitler.
And, at home, the wife was in charge of the main executioner of the world. The despotic and loud-mouthed Margaret was tiring Himmler. She was 7 years older than him and constantly gave him advice. Himmler began to be delayed at work, where he had an affair with the secretary who gave birth to 2 children for him.
Well, first of all, the wives knew about these families. They knew about the children that were born in these families. They knew that they would officially contain the second and third wives, and the second and third family.
When the head of the party office, Martin Bormann, fell in love with actress Manja Behrens, his wife Gerda fully approved it. Martin, in a letter, confessed to his wife that he forced Manja to be close to him. And the lawful spouse considers this absolutely normal. Moreover, Gerda even fantasized how great it would be if the Third Reich would allow polygamy.
She wrote the text of the project law that the head of the Third Reich could enter into sexual relations, even into marriage with another woman. The only requirement is that she does not give birth to children from him.
Gerda Bormann spoke quite in the spirit of the party line. Hitler seriously planned to introduce polygamy in the country after the victory of Germany in the war. First, he would allow the distinguished heroes to take the second wife, and then completely cancel the monogamy.
Polygamy was justified by ideology. The Germans have excellent genetics, and you need to have as many children as possible.
Bormann's connection with the actress lasted until 1945, but the party apparatus could be calm. The wife perfectly controlled Martin's behavior, and then Joseph Goebbels decided that he could do the same. The Minister of Propaganda did not miss a single skirt. After him, There were only diaries where he recorded his sexual victories. But Goebbels fell in love with the Czech actress Lida Barov. She is the most beautiful.
You know what I mean? On the one hand, and on the other hand.
His Czech lover wrote in her letters that he charmed her with his voice. Hearing Goebbels' voice once, I got goosebumps.
Magda, the legal wife, was not against their relationship and only insisted that Lida should not give birth to children from Joseph. But when Goebbels started talking about divorce, Magda immediately complained to Hitler.
Hitler called Goebbels to the carpet and said, "My friend, please end your relationship with a racially inferior woman, because you are breaking everything that we are doing here with you."
Joseph obediently broke up with his lover. In punishment, she was deprived of her right to a profession. Goebbels was happy. Lida easily got rid of him. Hitler could easily send her to a concentration camp.
All the leaders below Hitler obeyed Hitler unconditionally.
Trying to bring down Hitler's praise, Himmler constantly sought to improve the system of concentration camps. In the end, he came up with a monstrous idea. This picture was taken in April 1945 near the gates of the newly liberated city, the concentration camp in Buchenwald. In these trucks, animals had to be taken out of the camp zoo. But these women quickly got into the cars, decently dressed and not too fat. They were prostitutes from the camp brothel. It turned out that Heinrich Himmler personally ordered to arrange public houses for prisoners in concentration camps.
In his directive, Himmler wrote literally the following: "It is necessary to create a positive image of a prison camp. Law-abiding, efficient, capable. It is necessary to support such people, including providing them with appropriate sexual services."
The world tried to forget about the camp prostitution after the Second World War. Only at the beginning of the 21st century, they began to speak carefully about this topic.
In 9 concentration camps, there were brothels for prisoners who were punished there.
The brothel for prisoners in Buchenwald was opened on July 15, 1943. This largest camp in Germany existed since 1937 and was called Labor Camp. Criminals had to work in a quarry in the neighboring town of Weimar and on neighboring farms. And in the process of re-education, a visit to a camp prostitute was a form of encouragement for excellent discipline and hard work.
A person, if he worked well and did not violate the regime and helped the administration in every possible way, he received first an enhanced food ration, then the opportunity to sleep in more decent conditions. And in the third approach, he could get, firstly, access to tobacco products, and secondly, get sex from a prisoner.
The workers of the camp brothels were mainly women convicted of prostitution. Supervisors could monitor the process, but any contacts between prostitutes and German servicemen were prohibited. The guards had their own brothels outside the perimeter, outside the barbed wire. Women of the Third Reich had to give birth tirelessly. Before the age of 35, each woman had to become a mother at least 4 times. For this, many families received benefits from mortgages and had the right to a domestic servant who was expelled from Poland or the USSR. The Reich's leadership tried to pull the country out of the demographic pit.
It still has not completely rid its brilliant German people of reparations, of all the madness of the First World War. Therefore, in 1932, only 1 million Germans were born. It was a catastrophe.
Every year, on August 12th, on the day of Hitler's mother's birth, many children were given an honorary cross. Bronze for 4 children, silver for 6, and gold for 8. The first was awarded to Magda Goebbels, a model German mother, and the future murderer of her 6 children.
Mom is back.
If the husband was killed, and if all the grooms were at the front, the German woman still had no right to remain childless.
And then Himmler came up with an outrageous program which would later be passed under the slogan, "Give the child to Hitler, or the factory of the production of the true Aryans."
This organization was financed by the SS. It was called the Aryan Farm or Incubator, and officially named Lebensborn, the source of life.
Here in Steinhering was the first and largest house of life. Himmler personally cut the ribbon at the opening on August 15, 1936.
The workers of Lebensborn called their houses the Houses of Lightning. The SS emblem was placed on them. They were divided into the house of the child and the house of the mother. The Germans came there voluntarily. The blue-eyed Slavs were forced to live there. The soldiers and officers of the Wehrmacht, who were discharged, were sent from the fronts of the Second World War to these houses, and they became the biological fathers of the children of Lebensborn.
I was conceived on the day when Germany captured France. On this occasion, a day off was announced in the army. My mother went to the island of Oisdam, where the Nazi elite was gathering. There she met my future father. I became an illegitimate child, and my mother gave me to the house of Lebensborn.
It would seem like a great idea. A woman is quite legally free from the fruit of her sin. No one condemns an illegitimate mother. And a blue-eyed, light-haired child is brought up in the spirit of National Socialism.
It was planned to raise a new generation, people who carry not only Aryan ideas, but also Aryan ideology. Homo erectus.
On the other hand, the Lebensborn program. Many historians consider it an exaggerated form of deviation and immorality, and a legal deviation.
Perhaps this idea came to Himmler based on his idea of sex. He was a virgin until the age of 28, before meeting his future wife, because he was rejected by all women. And then he came up with an excuse that would direct his sexual energy in a more useful direction.
In the end, the Germans decided that they did not have enough children. Lebensborn shelters began to be opened in the occupied territories. One by one in Belgium, Germany, Denmark, and in the beloved Hitler's Norway, there were as many as 5 branches of the organization. One by one in every major city. And the worst thing is that the Nazis sometimes just stole children.
I don't care if they are Russians or Czechs. If these people can give a decent replenishment of our blood. If necessary, we will kidnap their children and raise them in our country.
In the occupied territories, special SS units searched for Aryan-type children, took them from their parents and took them to the houses of the source of life. These children were declared a legacy of the nation. Every week, children were measured noses, the shape of the skull, and the cut of the eyes. If the baby had non-Aryan features, he was waiting for a camp of destruction.
Aryan wrong children were simply subject to destruction in every sense of the word. And Aryan right children were taken from families and sent to German orphanages, where the most right Aryans grew from them.
On August 25, 1941, another batch of Romanian children was checked in an orphanage near Heidelberg. The Germans scrupulously recorded that only 2 out of 25 babies could enrich the German nation. 23 children were taken to the death camp. In Pskov and Novgorod, mothers hid their white-haired children, but only in August 1943, 10,000 Soviet babies were taken from their parents and sent to the Lebensborn orphanages. In total, more than 250,000 children were taken from the occupied territories during the war to Germany. In words, the Third Reich was the most moral place on earth, and even in Berlin, clients were humiliated in public houses. The Gestapo looked at it through the fingers, especially if the walls of the brothel were equipped with eavesdropping devices.
We were faced with the task of suppressing any, even hypothetical, resistance with any means.
Back in 1937, the head of the Foreign Intelligence, Walter Schellenberg, put his eye on the Kitty Salon, an excellent public house in the center of Berlin, where foreign diplomats loved to visit.
His wife, Kitty Schmidt, really wanted to leave Nazi Germany, and for this she transferred money to Britain. But at the moment when she was finally to leave the business and go to Britain, she was taken into the open arms of the Nazi special services. Kitty's choice was simple: a concentration camp or espionage.
The salon was literally stuffed with eavesdropping equipment. 48 microphones were hidden in the walls, and there were prototypes of hidden cameras in all the rooms. In the basement of the house, 2 employees listened to the clients' conversations one by one.
Alcohol and drinks are easier. The tongue is untied. Everyone hears such things as a sweet trap or something else when a lady uses it to get information of a certain kind.
The Nazis carefully selected new employees in the salon. 20 smart, beautiful ladies without any complexes, and most importantly, fanatically in love with the Führer and Nazism. So they easily split up Count Chano, the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs.
And when he told the girls who were discussing him that my father-in-law and I were talking about Hitler all the time, as if we were talking about a small Austrian joker, he made himself a death sentence.
In the public house, the Nazis spied not only on foreigners, but also on each other. Joachim von Ribbentrop, Robert Lake, and even Goebbels visited the brothel a couple of times.
Yes, it turned out that some of the leaders of the Third Reich were inclined to perversion, but this was known before, let's say, inside the party. Everyone was watching each other, and this information was known.
According to President Roosevelt's order, during the Second World War, scientists made psychological portraits of the top of the Third Reich. Roosevelt wanted to know how these people could behave after the war.
In itself, the question was quite interesting for us. It was assumed that after the end of the Second World War, the top of the Third Reich would do something to the authorities.
Having analyzed the speeches and photos of Hitler, the specialists drew interesting conclusions.
Yes, he showed a passion for light masochism and all sorts of other light, so to speak, sexual deviations.
There were a lot of rumors about Hitler's personal life. He was not married. The political image of the Führer was upset that he had only one fiancée, the German nation. However, there were also rumors about Hitler's special passions. For example, he had an affair with his own niece, Jelly Robb, who was 19 years younger than him. It is interesting that Hitler's father, Alois Schicklgruber, was married to his niece. Alois was a sadist and beat his children to death. Adolf hated his father, never mentioned his mother, and even took the name of his grandfather, Hitler.
Initially, a sick family, sick parents, could not psychologically raise a normal healthy child. That is, the whole generation is sexually perverted. Therefore, naturally, Hitler could not be normal with such genetics.
Jelly loved men, and Hitler was terribly jealous of her, and he finished her off with his despotism. In the end, the girl shot herself.
It is difficult to say what kind of relationship these were. His political opponents claimed that he preferred abnormal, violent sexual practices.
There is a theory that Jelly was helped to die. They said that she got pregnant with another man, and Hitler killed her in a fit of jealousy. And in the circles of those close to the Führer, Himmler coped with Jelly, who believed that empty talk distracts Hitler from important affairs and hinders his political career. Not such fanatics were involved in the encirclement of Hitler. This is Rudolf Jess, deputy Führer of the party and Reichsminister.
Rudolf Jess. He even had a nickname then, in this regard, Black Emma. He was a burning brunette.
Jess was considered a very close friend of Hitler among the Nazis.
I promise to stand by your side, to go together, no matter what awaits us on this path.
After the beer party, Rudolf Jess sat with Hitler in one cell. It was him, the future Führer, who dictated the Bible of fascism, Mein Kampf, My Struggle.
Jess spent the most time with Hitler alone. He was probably the only person who could bring Hitler to the state of exaltation that he took this nation.
Before each public speech, Hitler locked himself up with Jess for at least half an hour. No one knows what was going on there. But then the Führer came out to the people, and some kind of mysticism began.
Our goals are sacred. Our determination is growing.
Hitler attracted his supporters, not with any global actions, but first of all with his voice, tone, and charisma. And it was this charisma that Jess promoted in the first place. What methods did this story not reach us with?
Another close friend of Hitler was Ernst Röhm, head of the assault brigades.
Rome was the only one who spoke to Hitler on equal terms. It was mutual respect and strong friendship between two men.
Rome constantly boasted his closeness to Hitler and spoke right and left that there was not just friendship between them. Maybe that's why Hitler ordered him to be killed.
Now, I am a different person. I will destroy those who doubt me, those who are ready to betray me.
Since the late 1930s, only one woman has been seen next to Hitler, Eva Braun. She lived in his residence Berghof in the Bavarian Alps. However, the wife of the watchman of Berghof regularly dug into the bed linen of the Führer and swore that she had never noticed any traces of a stormy night.
Hitler had a personal life, but it was different from what many wanted and could imagine.
It is very possible that Hitler was not at all interested in standard sex. In 2019, Professor Thomas Lundmark, in his book on the civil wife of the Führer, Eva Braun, stated that she had never had sex with Hitler because of a rare gynecological disease.
She had the Myra-Rokitansky syndrome, which meant that she could not have children.
With such a syndrome in a woman, the birth threshold of development was getting deeper. A sexual act for her was practically impossible. Hitler had a whole bunch of chronic diseases. He often caught a cold and ended up in a hospital with pneumonia. It even hurt him to urinate.
She could not have sex with a man because she was in pain. It is quite possible that they did not have standard sex between them.
However, Braun told her friends and sisters that everything was fine between them and Adolf. Most likely, Hitler and Braun's relationship was that Eva offered the Nazi Germany leader protection from rumors about his personal life. No matter how strange Hitler's preferences were, Eva knew how to keep her mouth shut. Strangeness was not considered a defect among the main Nazis. Hermann Göring, the second person in Germany after Hitler, was a champion in this sense.
As for Hermann Göring's strangeness, everything is quite simple from a psychological point of view. This is a psychotype called a steroid. Its main task is to attract as much attention as possible in any possible way.
One of the Nazis, the world's first 20-year-old Göring, shot down 22 planes and became a squadron commander. At that time, he was called a fearless hero. After the war, it turned out that Hermann was just an adrenaline junkie.
When the First World War ended, he participated in aerial combat and demonstrated flying skills on the level. Or rather, not on the level, but on the limit with immaturity.
Göring, for example, loved to fly under bridges. And all this on a low-flow plane, without precise instruments. And then he turned not into an adrenaline junkie, but a real junkie.
When he was already the head of Luftwaffe, he came up to me on the parade, and I looked him in the eyes. They were like glass. Then I realized that he was under drugs.
The fact is that during the beer punch, Hermann Göring received 2 wounds in the groin and in the stomach. The bullet hit the kidney. Because of the hormonal failure, the hero of the war began to gain weight rapidly. The painful pain was removed by morphine, and Göring became addicted to drugs.
There were no other ways but morphine to make painkillers. And these doses gradually increased. And even if the pain could subside, Göring could no longer live without drugs.
The Germans did not suspect the deathly passion of the head of Luftwaffe. They did not seem to have seen any painful dullness or his glass look. Perhaps they were struck by the dazzling appearance of the Reichsmarshal.
Like any normal histeroid, he tried to put on the most beautiful clothes that could exist. He tried to organize his life in such a way that it was similar on the one hand to the peace of the Roman emperor, and on the other hand to the boudoir of a lady of easy behavior.
Next to the boring gray, brown, black uniforms of his colleagues, the azure and scarlet French Göring were simply shining. He looked like a peacock or a parrot in a flock of crows and pigeons.
Not a single Nazi leader was noticed in such a way. It was very unusual.
Even at official meetings, Hermann Göring looked like a disheveled rooster. The whole staff of artists and porters constantly invented and sewed new uniforms for him.
The suits were made of white couture, with a large number of gears of all kinds. His coat of arms was always called for the brightness of the suits.
He was especially indifferent to boots, above the knees, and all the colors of the rainbow: orange, yellow, bright red.
He sweated a lot. Due to his weight, he sweated a lot. To hide this smell, he constantly used perfume.
Scarlet nails and slanted eyes crowned this beauty. In the drug craze, Hermann Göring called himself a descendant of the French king Ludovic.
He was an actor in his soul, obviously. During the opening of the Berlin Olympics in 1936, he made an appointment at the Ministry of Internal Affairs. It was the largest building, not only in Berlin, but in Europe for service purposes. He reproduced the German life of the 18th and 19th centuries in this building.
During the war, in his estate, Carling Hall, he threw parties in the style of the Roman patricians, and he himself was in the image of Nero, sprinkled with Toki diamonds.
He also climbed the mountains well. He loved to hunt like an Indian. He tied his head with a white bandage and ran away. The guards searched for him for hours.
Göring met guests with a hand lion on a leash. The lion was called Booby, and he was very attached to the owner.
Come to me. Booby, come to me. I'll stroke you. Go, my dear.
A couple of floors of his estate was occupied by a model of a toy railway. According to the laws of wartime, trains were shelled by toy artillery, and planes were attached to the ceiling beams, which threw wooden bombs on the rails. But the main thing is that everything was under control. The German people saw Göring completely different.
I will sweep everyone with an iron broom, regardless of their beliefs, who will strive to suppress national aspirations and violate the dignity of German citizens.
The Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, seemed to be a freak even in the background of his comrades in arms at the top of the Third Reich.
He was lame, after poliomyelitis. One leg is shorter than the other. Small, short, plump. He was called a poisonous dwarf for a reason.
The Nazi laws declassified Goebbels as a cripple. Eternal people were subject to isolation and destruction.
One day, our patience will run out. It is already at its limit.
Goebbels was not only lame himself. He was passionate about cripples, sick, and preferably dying women. Once, right on the street, he put a one-legged girl in his car and slept with her the same evening. And then he expressed his passion for one employee, finding out that she was mortally ill.
I spent years with him at a distance of no more than 10 meters. I saw him almost every day. He often came to the office with drunk girls and locked himself in the office with them.
The Führer did not smoke and did not smell tobacco. Drunkenness was considered a serious sin. In 1933, the Reich adopted the law on prevention of hereditary diseases.
First of all, there were psychological and psychiatric deviations, schizophrenia, manic depressive psychosis, and some other mental illnesses. And the last point was chronic alcoholism.
Chronic alcoholics were forced to be sterilized. In the prisons of Bavaria, 53 of the 300 prisoners were immediately castrated.
A proper Aryan cannot be an alcoholic, because it is a disease that is inherited. Accordingly, such a person cannot have children. Therefore, sterilization. Cruel, inhuman, without any doubt.
And the head of the main department of imperial security of the SS, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, drank from morning to evening for years. He mixed cognac with champagne and smoked up to 100 cigarettes a day.
My mistakes are part of my fate, which is stronger than me.
The Führer's guards recalled that Kaltenbrunner came to Hitler drunk. One day he got so drunk that he fell into a puddle at the entrance, and Hitler ordered to take him away so as not to be disgraced in front of the guests. Perhaps even the Führer was afraid of him.
He looked more like a 2-meter-tall lumberjack. A face with scars, which everyone was afraid of only after seeing it.
In 1944, in Vienna, at an official event, Kaltenbrunner ordered to execute an officer who accidentally spilled wine on the table. Former adjutant of Kaltenbrunner wrote in memoirs, he often did such things drunk. The next day, he could not remember who he ordered to kill.
At the same time, this person had one important quality from the point of view of the Nazis. He had unconditional loyalty. Unconditional loyalty to the cause of the party and the cause of Hitler. This is where the double standard policy appeared.
Everyone knew that Ernst Kaltenbrunner was a drunkard, but it was their drunkard, which means that he was not underage. The propaganda of the Third Reich was full of modesty, but the reality was different. The passion of the Nazis for excessive luxury could not even be taken under control by Hitler. The Führer also had a gun. He was the richest man in Germany. At the end of the 1920s, Hitler rented an apartment in Munich. Quite modestly, but in 1929, he bought his own apartment.
He bought an apartment with an area of 320 square meters, which included 9 rooms, a kitchen, a dressing room, 2 bathrooms, and a spacious hall. There, Hitler was repairing his project. And again, it seemed to be for his own money. But in fact, this is not true.
The situation in the apartment was in the latest fashion. Expensive furniture, art, sculpture, painting of the Renaissance era. And still, most of all, Hitler loved his residence in the Bavarian Alps. Such a beautiful view of the Alps opens from the panoramic window of Hitler's Villa Berghof. In translation, it is a mountain castle. At first, he came to this guest house as a simple vacationer. And in 1933, when Hitler became Reich Chancellor of Germany, he bought a chalet for 40,000 Reichsmarks.
But in fact, all this is nothing compared to the funds that the party owned. And, as you know, Hitler did not make a difference between the party's personal money and the state as a whole.
Hitler did not buy cars. He was given them. Here is one of his favorites.
This armored car was equipped with the latest technology of the time. It had electromagnetic locks, and the doors could only be opened from the inside. The car was equipped with handguns and even a machine gun. Footrests for bodyguards were provided.
According to the most modest calculations, Adolf Hitler's fortune by the end of his life was about 700 million Reichsmarks. If we convert it to modern money, it will turn out to be about $3.5 billion. The 4 Ribbentrops were nicknamed the Ribbentrops. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nazi Germany, an outcast from the common people, for a start, borrowed the aristocratic prefix von from his distant relatives. And in 1923, he built an elegant villa with a tennis court and a pool in Berlin. The entire color of the Berlin society was walking at his parties. People who knew Ribbentrop well said that his passion to live as luxuriously as possible resembled a mental illness.
We just took care of our basic needs.
During the Nuremberg trial, Ribbentrop, accustomed to luxury, always demanded champagne and was indignant when tea was brought to him. Göring had the second largest private collection of works of art. Hitler was the only one who had more paintings. The Führer planned to create a museum in the city of Linz and transfer them there. Göring decided to organize the museum in his estate. Göring sent his agents all over Europe. The Germans even robbed the Allies. In Holland, the treasure hunters forced the famous collector Jacques Gutsteker to sell the greatest collection of paintings of Rubens, Velázquez, Van Gogh, and Cranach for a mere penny. Göring was delighted.
There were rumors that he bought at least 3 paintings a week. Different sources show us that about 1,500 paintings were in his collection. He loved Raphael very much. He had works by Sandro Botticelli in his collection.
On April 17, 1950, a treasure was found in the castle of Waldenstein. These treasures belonged to Hermann Göring. In his collection, there were 36 large golden candlesticks, baths of silver, paintings of famous artists, a collection of old cognac and money. There were more than 100 million German marks.
Why not steal what is poorly kept and costs a lot? In addition, it supplies another Reichsleiter Rosenberg. It provides all the goods robbed from the occupied countries.
In 1945, the New York Times evaluated the value of Göring's collection at $200 million. In today's money, it is at least $3 billion. The organizer of the Holocaust, Reinhard Geydrich, also lived in luxury. His mansion in Berlin was decorated in the style of modernism, and in Prague he settled in a luxurious castle. But the main defect of Geydrich was not a passion for luxury. Geydrich's son Klaus wrote, "He was like a car. He did not love, did not hate, he just acted. I do not remember that he ever hugged me just like that."
His psychotype is paranoid, accentuation of personality, and of course, he has a superior idea. Moreover, this superior idea is brought to the ideal. This superior idea is associated with the superiority of the Aryan race.
One day, Geydrich found a cat in his office. In a fit of rage, in front of the children, he beat the beast to death, condemning it. This is an example of how to deal with attackers. When in 1943, his eldest son Klaus had typhus, Geydrich refused to call a doctor until the boy lost consciousness, because weakness does not forgive. He must endure, and this is how we all endure for the sake of the Reich. Geydrich was set up by his wife Lena.
Lena, in my opinion, was one of the most disgusting people in the entire Third Reich. The Third Reich was full of terrible people, but Lena was the worst of all.
The entire top of the Third Reich knew Lena Geydrich is cold, calculating, and very greedy. Her craving for a beautiful life and money did not know any moral barriers.
When Geydrich was appointed the administrator of annexed Czechoslovakia, they settled in the castle, which was taken away from the local sugar industry. There were many deer horns in the corridors of this castle. Lena sold them to some button factory and cut down centuries-old trees in the park and sold them as wood.
Secrecy, greed, perversion, and cruelty. Undoubtedly, the leaders of the Third Reich had something to hide from their subjects and each other. But the main threshold of fascism is obvious to everyone. Supernatural vanity and a giant sense of superiority over all people, that which allows the player to destroy the people.